Let's take a look at a two-head model Whelen power supply designed for strobe preemption and to be compatible with 3M Opticom. Strobe preemption has been around for some decades. Originally introduced by 3M, they were large bulky units like this. I do have another video on that. And then there are other ways that it is eventually incorporated in other products. Federal Signal, Code 3 among others, allowed you to mount a real Opticom in their products. Nova came out with their own version of the product, as did Tomar. Tomar went so far as to take their version of the product and sell kits that you could put in competitors' light bars, stating that it was 3M Opticom compatible, and here it goes in this competitor's light bar. They went so far as to put it in Whelen light bars, or to suggest that you do so at least. But 3M and Whelen always enjoyed a decent relationship. There was a very specific mount for the Opticom for the Whelen Edge, and the Opticom main board for a long time was very, very similar and shared components with Whelen Edge strobe power supply boards. So I would say it's safe to say by far Whelen had the better relationship with, if not was in cooperation with 3M. So where does the PE215 come in? Well, it's a little different than the standard Opticom or even the competitors' attempts to copy. This is a two-head device. What it's doing is it is splitting up the preemption flash, which is strobe light at a specific frequency in order to be received and trigger a traffic light to change. And it's taking that, it's splitting it up, and it's splitting it between two light heads. Each one on its own is not a sufficient speed or rate to trigger the traffic light changing. However, together they will. The advantage here is that a standard Opticom is so fast that it's not really a viable emergency warning light from a visual standpoint. It was looked at as wasted space, and the later versions were actually infrared, and they were wasted space if placed in a light bar. So right before and during the infrared period for 3M, Whelen produced this power supply, and I believe the idea here was to make use of the strobes that were doing the preemption as a visual warning device as well as a preemption strobe. So here on my bench, I'm running through in various speeds of filming exactly how that looks in a two-head version like this. Then we'll also take a look at how a regular Opticom would look, and then we'll look at them together. And following that, we'll go through and I will show my thought process on how I would mount this power supply or utilize this power supply. But there's certainly lots of ways you could use this with two strobes. It could work very well in the Edge Plus light bar series. It could work very well in the 4500 or Advantage Plus light bars, or it could just be surface mounted lights on a larger vehicle. But it would certainly take away the wasted space idea if you were doing strobes. So the 3M Opticom normal housing was made for the single light, and like I said, it didn't show up super great for warning. And this is how fast the 3M Opticom would be flashing. I'm using colored bulbs on these just so you can see them better, because when they're in clear, they tend to wash out a lot. But at full speed, 1/4 speed, and 1/8 speed, you can see just how fast the flash is. And it doesn't necessarily attract a lot of attention. It does what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't necessarily attract attention. So if we take twice the number of strobe bulbs, but have them flash half as fast, suddenly you drop back into that range where it is attention grabbing. and not just useful from a data transmission standpoint. And again, I've slowed this footage down and used colored bulbs so you can see the correlation of the single Opticom flashing at the same rate as the two bulbs put together on the Whelen supply. It is a direct correlation, and you're using the two bulbs to flash at the same rate as the single bulb. So you can see that better here, like I said, with the colored bulbs. Once we start looking at other ways to actually use this in the intended color of white or clear, it gets a little harder to see exactly the speeds even when it's slowed down. So this bench demonstration is kind of proof of concept to show that it does in fact do exactly what it set out to do, which is double the lights to cut the speed. So the way that I chose to demonstrate this as a possible industry solution is to use a Piercer 2 housing and the Opticom housing for Whelen by 3M. Looked a lot like a Piercer 2 housing, but it had the single bulb. It also has the honeycomb filter for focusing, but it really is a very similar device to a Piercer 2 in the sense that it is a self-contained strobe power supply mounted to a center section of black lens, or center lens section, if you will. And in this case, it's a single bulb flashing at the predetermined Opticom rate, and they really aren't that attention-getting in person. So the idea is maybe we could make it more attention-getting if we slowed the speed down a little bit. So this is slowed down video-wise, and even slowed down to 1/8 speed. The single bulb Opticom is just very, very little dwell time. It's a lot of flashes, but they're very, very quick. So it's kind of hard. The eye almost starts to ignore it from a standpoint of being a warning signal. It almost becomes a steady burn to your brain, essentially. So here is a standard Piercer 2 to demonstrate the speed, which they are very fast, single flash. They're not preemption speed though. They're very attention getting. They're right at that flash rate where they're just real attention grabbing. Mounted in the same way, right in the center of the edge light bar. And we'll slow this one down too, and you can see it's pretty fast. And it's single flash and it's alternating, but it's not so fast as to trigger an Opticom device, but it's also not so fast as to become indistinguishable from steady burn. This is 1/8 speed, and it is it's pretty easy to distinguish the individual flashes, even in the clear lens variety. So my idea was to use the preemption supply and power a Piercer 2. It is still pretty fast, and it is still kind of a blur on film, but in person, and here slowed down to 1/4 and in a minute here 1/8 speed, I do think it has been slowed down enough to be viable visual warning, and it does still work as a preemption device. So this would be one way you could use this power supply. And the reason I'm showing this particular application is to try to do the most apples to apples comparison of what else Whelen and 3M both offered. The housing being similar, the bulb sizes being the same, essentially all things being equal in both mounting and bulb, does dividing this into two bulbs and flashing each one at half the rate make it a viable visual warning device? And if it doesn't come across in the video, it really kind of does, in my opinion. I'm wondering about trying some other light heads as far as whether or not they would still be distinguishable. I don't know how close you're supposed to group the lights. Whelen's literature on this product is not very detailed. It wasn't offered for a terribly long time. So here we can compare the normal edge mount Opticom and the Piercer 2 with the Preemption power supply. You're getting the same flash rate, but the one on the right has one bulb, the one on the left has two bulbs. It looks to be a similar attention-getting level on video, but in person, the one on the right is just so fast, it doesn't really catch your eye as well as the two separate ones in the Piercer 2 housing on the left. Slowing this down as well, so we can kind of see that we're getting the 2-for-1 effect or the split effect, same rate, just with two bulbs. That's still doing the same thing. It's unfortunate that the increase in visibility doesn't really come across in this video, but it definitely, in this sort of like housing to housing, apples to apples comparison, the Piercer 2 with the Preemption supply is definitely more visible. I don't know if the range would be as effective. The Opticom is designed specifically for tripping the traffic light. The honeycomb makes it very directional. The Piercer 2 is designed to have a diffuser on the lens, so I'm not sure the range. I don't currently have a system to test this on. So here's the standard Piercer 2 and the Preemption powered Piercer 2. They're both quite effective, and I don't think the Preemption powered one is significantly less effective. It's not more effective, but it's definitely not less like the purpose-designed single bulb 3M one. But like I said, while I do operate in a system that uses these devices, I don't currently have a testing rig, and I'm not going to disrupt traffic, even though I am authorized to replace parts, etc. on the vehicles that use these. I'm not going to alter traffic flow as a test. So unfortunately, I can't test this without the receiver end, which is something I'm looking into getting. But it's quite a bit of a expenditure just to kind of prove a point. I will say that other Preemption devices tend to work, maybe not as far, but they do tend to work even with different bulbs and different lens designs. So I'm pretty confident this would still work, if not maybe from not quite so far away. So we'll look at all three devices together here. We'll do it at full speed, quarter speed, 1/8 speed. I'm not sure how well this shows through. In fact, the middle one, which is the standard Piercer 2, shows up the worst, which is not true in person. So I don't think you're going to get a good idea from this video, but the one on the far left, which is the purpose-designed Opticom emitter, really doesn't show up great in person. The center one, which is the Piercer 2 designed for warning, shows up quite well. And the one on the right, which is the Piercer 2 with the split Preemption supply, shows up almost as well as the regular Piercer 2 and definitely a lot better than the purpose-built Opticom. I don't know how to show this in video and really get it to come through. You'll just have to take my word for it, I guess. Regardless, it's an interesting concept. Nova, I believe, had a power supply that used multiple heads for preemption. Aside from them, and Tomar, using the two bulbs on the base of the strobe hawk, I don't know that preemption was normally done any other way than a single head. And it was, again, very purpose-built. And current preemption, which is probably on its last legs as radio frequency and GPS technology will take over, is done infrared. So the days of the strobe Opticom, it's essentially a legacy device. So really, regardless, the whole system is essentially going obsolete, and just like you don't really see strobes as warning devices anymore either with LEDs. So we're really semantics here as far as what's more effective, because it's not going to really be in use much longer anyway. I just thought it was an interesting niche product that was able to save the preemption properties of the device, but also bring it back into the attention-getting side of the world. And it would have made a lot of sense in the days of strobes. It would have been an interesting option to use in a variety of ways. So there's a little bit more footage comparing these. I still don't think it really does it justice as far as what's more visible, but if you're interested in watching the cadence or the speeds of the different flashes, stick around. I got a few more minutes of that on here. Otherwise, thanks for joining me to watch the application of this unusual power supply. And feel free to scroll through my other videos. I have one on standard preemption devices. And if you liked this, I have a lot of other similar sort of analysis videos on warning lights. I will say, please do not play around with preemption devices or any warning lights, but preemption devices are one of the few warning lights, if you will, that are actually illegal to own in some areas, whereas most other lights are just illegal to use. Like I said, I do have an agency affiliation for using these and servicing them, so I'm not just having them sit around as my personal stuff, which I would like to do, but so I do have a reason to have these parts, because as legacy devices they are still used, and we're not going to be upgrading current Opticom to infrared just for the sake of upgrading it. So I have these parts lying around for legitimate emergency vehicle service reasons. I do not recommend purchasing Opticom or any other preemption devices. It's only going to serve to get you into trouble, and they're not that interesting without the other end. And just the temptation would probably be there to play with them, and you just should never do that. Anytime you change a traffic signal, you're creating some form of hazard, and you don't want to be responsible for an accident or an injury because you thought it would be fun to play with traffic preemption. That said, traffic preemption was hailed at the time as being a huge breakthrough. And me personally, I've never been a huge fan. I feel like I still have to clear the intersection. Even with the light being changed for me, I still have to watch. There's a lot of variables they can set on the traffic light side, but they all have their trade-offs as far as what you change the light to, how fast, how long, whether you're just turning it green, letting things clear, and you have to worry about people turning, or if you're turning everything red. Regardless, to me, there's not a lot of time saved versus just running a safe, do regard lights and sirens trip. There are applications where it makes a lot of sense. A specific one is where the agency I'm with uses it. It's essentially used to clear out standing traffic and get it moving while we drive down our approach, so there's not stopped traffic blocking the approach. It turns the traffic signal green and it clears the road out for us, which is an interesting application. But overall, this is technology that's probably going away eventually, but it's also a technology that no one should really play with just for fun. That being said, thank you for watching me play with it just for fun, and feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks.